Kråkan, also known as Corvus Cornix, and welcome to Yacc, yet another Crowcast where I pick a game I played for a week and then I'll talk about it. This week's game is Castlevania Bloodlines for the Sega Genesis. It was released in 1994 and it's an action platformer, but the way I played it this week was on the Castlevania Anniversary Collection for the PS4. So this game was developed by Konami and also published by them, and also be some spoilers up ahead, just but first a little backstory. So for me, Castlevania is synonymous with autumn, and since summer is over, I figured I will jumpstart autumn with Castlevania Bloodlines. So the plot goes like this: John Morris and Eric Lecarde are to stop Dracula from being resurrected yet again, this time by the hands of Dracula's niece called Elizabeth Bartley. And this is only possible by a witch called Drolta Suensis. The game starts with the Konami logo, and then you get a cutscene explaining the plot, and then a pool of blood appears with some ribs in it, revealing the Castlevania title. And if you wait a bit, you get a demo. Then you can select between one play start, password, and options. And in the options menu, you get a sound test, and this is related to an Easter egg later on, so I'll talk about that later in the podcast. And then you get to pick between John or Eric. So John is wielding the famous vampire killer whip, and he's apparently from Texas. Eric is from Spain, and he wields the Alucard spear. So I started my adventure by picking John, going to Dracula's castle, fighting zombies, picking up items by whipping candles, just like any other Castlevania game. The sound font of the Genesis is a little bit weird. It sounds a bit like, well, it's metallic. That's the easiest way to explain it. So later in the first level, you go to an underground area where there are mermen, bats, skeletons, and a mid-boss, also a hound that's howling, shattering the windows behind it. And for some reason, the game was struggling with this. It was a tremendous slowdown, actually. So Bloodlines differ a bit from other Castlevanias that I played. This game is gory and bloody, very visceral, actually. And yeah, the sub-weapons, you have some of the classic ones like the axe, but otherwise you have boomerangs or these orbs that fly around the screen. And you don't use heart as ammunition as the other Castlevanias, you use jewels. And I almost forgot to talk about it, but this game has a life bar, and it has so you can take a fair amount of hits, but there's no timer, there's just a high score, so it's a little bit different from the other Castlevanias that I played. So this game, thankfully, has wall meat as well, and a bit later in the game you climb some dragon skeletons, and it crumbles as you move across it, reaching Dracula's castle, where you will fight a boss knight of some sort. So keep your distance, whip him a bit, and he will crumble more and more. The fight goes on, and once you beat him, you pick up an orb, just like any other Castlevania, and then you get a password. So the next stage is Atlantic Greece, and this track that plays during this level is, I think I first heard it in Castlevania Circle of the Moon. It's a real banger, by the way. The level itself has water rising and falling, reflecting everything from objects, you, and enemies. And it's a really neat effect. It even reflects the pause text, when you pause the game. I was kind of surprised by this, actually. So I also got a whip upgrade, but you lose it as soon as you get hit, which is a bummer. And later in the level, there's an area with just rising water, so you need to climb the stairs in order to, not drown. And there's a boss fight atop the stairs, this hydromancer, I guess it's called. So you need to whip him down before he rises to water. So yeah, avoid drowning is the basic tip for this one. And then there are a bunch of birds, and there's another boss with a boss armor and a red armored dude after that. And then you have to go down the stairs while the water is sinking, and this area is full of flying Medusa heads. So this is basically a gauntlet. It's a good thing that the PS4 version has save states, actually. The same level also has breakable statues and pillars that make shift bridges. And the boss of this area was actually really hard. You fight against this rock guy, and you avoid the falling rocks from the ceiling, and chip away slowly at him. You collect the red orb, and you get a password. The next stage is Pisa, Italy, and this area is full of flying harpies and minotaurs charging at you. And inside the structure, I learned that John Morris, I should say, can use his whip as he can basically swing across chasms and gaps. And this is where I died because I ran into the mummies throwing bandages at me. And after that death, I tried to play a bit with Eric, so John Morris and Eric Lecarde play a bit differently. Eric has more reach and he can jump higher with the help of his spear, and that's about it. You hold down on the D-pad. There are a couple of other levels to the game, such as the munition factory in Germany. One of the bosses is actually a pile of gears that fights you, and a palace in France with a huge moth boss. And then a castle in England where you fight death itself and some mini-bosses. And at the end of the game, you fight Elizabeth. So this is basically the Hydromancer all over again. Go from left to right, whipping forward and backward. And the last boss is Dracula himself. He actually has 3 forms, and his final form is just like he looks like a red lobster actually. So gameplay. John and Eric are on a quest to stop Elizabeth and Dracula going through Europe in the process. Control, the D-pad is movement, X jumps, the square is whip, the option pauses the game, brings up the options menu, the L2 button brings up the emulation menu where you can save, load and go through manuals and display settings. And the circle button is a sub-weapon, and if you press up and the circle button, you do a special with that sub-weapon, costing more jewels. Graphics. So the graphics are a bit bloody and gory, but very colorful actually. So I like the boss designs a lot, and it's a lot different from the other Castlevanias that I played. So it comes down to this, like all the bosses are built of many small sprites, and that's actually a cool concept. It's different. Sound and music. Michihiro Yamane made the soundtrack for this game, and if that name sounds familiar, she actually made the soundtrack for Symphony of the Night. So the music on the Genesis sound metallic and clunky, but it's not bad, it's just the chipset that the console works with. There are a couple of good tracks, such as the Sinking Sanctuary and Discolored Walls. Yeah, all good tracks actually. Easter egg seekers and glitches. So in the options menu you can access a sound test, and by fiddling around a bit you can trigger a thing in the game which plays the classic Castlevania theme when you're fully upgraded with your whip. So this game was actually called the New Generation here in Europe, and New Generation is actually a lot more censored than Bloodlines. It has a lot less gore and visceral effects, let's just say that. And in order to beat the game and get the best ending, you need to beat it in the expert mode, and that's not an easy task to do. So in conclusion, I wrote, yes, play it if you can. So the game looks pretty good and it sounds good, and the controls are pretty responsive. It's a bit too challenging, but it's not super hard actually. Besides, the PS4 version actually has save states, so it's not that hard. You just have to take it easy and drop a few save state here and there. It's not my type of Castlevania, and it's a bit different, but that's not a bad thing necessarily. It's just different. And I would totally recommend it for someone who is interested in Bloodlines, because it's such a interesting take on Castlevania. I'm so used to the formula of the Super Nintendo, so the Genesis is actually a breath of fresh air. So anyway, thank you for listening and watching, and take care.